I'm Nishi Patel. I'm an award-winning accountant and Northamptonshire Business Person of the Year. And on this podcast, I'll be talking to successful business owners to learn about how they achieved their dream and the adversity they had to overcome along the way. This podcast is essential listening if you're running a business and need the motivation to scale it. You'll learn about what drives them forward when most people give up, how they made it through their darkest days, and the advice they would give to someone following in their footsteps. So today I'm privileged to be joined by Katie Goodall, who's the Managing Director of Starting Off. Katie, if you could just tell us about what Starting Off do.
Yeah, so Starting Off is a training and recruitment company. We specialise in apprenticeships. So the company's been running for sort of 30 plus years in Northampton, and we specialise in kind of recruiting apprentices into businesses, and then we deliver the training that makes that an apprenticeship, basically.
Okay, absolutely amazing. So you're like a one-stop shop for recruiting young people, I guess.
Yeah, essentially.
Yeah.
So we do lots of work in local schools and with education centres to sort of spread the word about apprenticeships, and then once we've kind of got those candidates to come in and meet with us, we'll work with local businesses to be able to place those in the jobs, and then we train as well. So very much kind of office-based business qualifications is what we specialise in, so sort of accountancy through to admin, customer service, team leader, IT, marketing. But yeah, it's been a really sort of successful business over the years that I've been involved with, and then been lucky enough to sort of take over in the last couple, really.
Okay, absolutely amazing. I've got a lot of questions around that anyway, but what I'd really like to do is just start from the beginning. So how did you get into work, and how did you get to Starting Off, really?
Yeah, so I'm from Northampton originally, born and bred. My granddad used to play for the Cobblers, so I'm a real Northampton girl. My dad worked at Carlsberg for years, Mum worked at several schools and hospitals, so I'd say probably quite a hard working but working class background. Sort of progressed through the different schools in Northampton, went to the boys' school for my sixth form, and then after taking a couple of gap years, ended up at university in Birmingham.
Oh, excellent. Okay.
So I studied social and economic history at that point, but I'd also worked in like the mental health sector a little bit as well, but I had a real interest in sort of the economy and that side of it, which is why I did the economic history. So when I finished university, I was actually at the University of Northampton doing some work on my dissertation, and there was a careers fair going on in one of the halls there, and I just sort of popped my head in, and there was a lady that used to run the graduate division of Starting Off called the First Degree there. So I was sort of having a chat with her, and she said, "Oh, let's take your details and you can come and register with us when you finish your degree." So I did that and sort of thought nothing of it, and then a couple of weeks later had a call from her. She said, "Come in and meet with us." So I went to register with the First Degree, hoping that they would be able to get me a graduate job. But during the registration, we were sort of talking about how I was really interested in business, but I was also passionate about helping people. And she was like, "Look, we've actually got a role for a trainee recruiter here. Would you be interested in that?" So I thought, oh yeah, well, do that. I didn't have any ambition to sort of stay in Northampton, if I'm honest, because I've been away to Birmingham. But after chatting, she said, "Come in," and I thought I'll do this for a couple of years, and and 15 years later, I'm still sort of with the business. But yeah, I started as a trainee recruiter, and then sort of slowly sort of worked my way up really from trainee recruiter to head of recruitment to then operations manager, and then the management buyout, so to managing director. So it's been a real journey for me from start to finish. But yeah, sort of never really felt the need to be looking elsewhere, if I'm honest.
Yeah, I mean, that's amazing, because I think I saw a stat, and it was your average member of staff stays in a business for about 2 years.
Yeah.
Or is it a member of staff stays in business for 2 years on average? And then but then someone told me something a bit more depressing about sales, which is like you're on average a salesperson stays in business for 1 year.
Right.
So yeah, I guess like it's always. I was interviewing someone yesterday, and she had quite a similar. Well, sorry, when this goes out, it won't be yesterday, but she had a similar journey into business, and she got her first graduate job, and then she stayed for like 14 years. How long's Starting Off been established? Like now?
So in 1989 it was originally establised. A good 30 plus years.
That was like the year I moved to this country.
Yeah,
yeah.
So I was not very old. So I think I was really lucky when I was given the opportunity to take over the business, because I'd worked in it for a long time, but it's a really well established brand already in Northamptonshire and got a great reputation. And I think that's always good, because when you're starting a business yourself from scratch, which we didn't do in this case, but that's probably one of the biggest challenges I would imagine, is like getting that brand name out there and building it, whereas we were quite lucky in that it was already there. But I guess our mission, I know we'll talk about next steps, is kind of we want that to be replicated in other places now, so other people know, starting off like they do in Northampton, really.
Yeah, absolutely. Like, because we've got, I mean, you've been recruiting for us for like, I think that's 6 or 7 years now.
Yeah.
And then we got clients, but they're kind of spread out, and I'm like, oh, you just go starting off, and I'm like, oh, actually, you're not in Northampton. But I know you go as far as Kettering and like.
Yeah. So now, I mean, with that's probably one good thing for us that came out of COVID, was that we completely went from being a training provider where all our students came in every week and all our staff were in every day to everything was remote. And we actually saw for some companies it worked a lot better, because it offered a lot more flexibility. A lot of students, that were having to come far to our training centres for half a day once a week, actually could do it remotely. So that model, we have carried on being able to offer that as well, which means that now we can recruit for companies that are outside of Northampton. So we've got some clients in London, we've got some clients in Newcastle, where we've been able to either just deliver the training for them or do the recruitment and the training. So, whilst a lot of those places do have their own apprenticeship kind of hubs, actually they're not always, they're sometimes national anyway. So, we're trying to just put our local feel into those national sort of places, and when a lot of the time it's clients that we've got established in Northampton that might have a branch in Birmingham that we're using
that's really good,
which is working really well for us at the minute. So it's a slow process, and we didn't want to do it all overnight and be like, we're going to go from being this size to being huge, because I think you've got to do it slowly. But for us, it does seem to be working. Yeah,
I mean, I really believe in a concept called leveraged advisory. So it's about helping lots of people at the same time.
Yeah.
And I guess training is the ultimate leveraged advisory, because for you, maybe it doesn't really make too much of a difference to your costs whether you got 10 people in that room or 5 people. Although I know at some point you've got to get more tutors. And So that's so actually the potential is huge, especially if you go further than Northampton.
No, definitely.
So I guess like from 89, what's changed in the industry? Like, I mean, well, that's or what actually, a better question might be, what would you say has changed in your industry in the last 5 years, for example, apart from the remote stuff? But
I mean, I think since I started working at Starting Off in 2008. And I think what I've really seen over that time, but probably in the last 5 years, is just the awareness around apprenticeships has just become so much more. I think with university fees becoming so much higher, and with people wanting to get into work earlier, sometimes the kind of focus on them from the government in terms of their campaigns and the funding available. It just seems to be so much more of a buzzword now, apprenticeships, than it ever was. I think it was seen as something that people did when they hadn't achieved academically, or something that people could do if they wanted to be a plumber, but actually it's quite business related now as well. So I think for me it's more just the awareness that we've got young people that got fantastic A levels that could go to any university, but actually are saying, actually I want to do an apprenticeship instead, because I want to be an accountant in 5 years time. I don't want to have loads of debt, so I think that's really positive.
I've known some people who went to university and did accounting degrees, and they come out and they get all these exemptions from their qualification because they've already done a lot of it at university, but they don't get all the exemptions, so they've still got to do some. And then they qualify, in terms of they finish the exams, but they can't properly qualify until they've still got that 3 years of experience. So it's kind of I never really I don't see the benefit anymore. When I went to university, it was pretty much free, or tuition fees were £1,000 a year. Whereas now it's that's a nest egg that could get you your first home. And I think when we've been recruiting apprentices, we've always been careful not to hire the people who couldn't go to university. We wanted to make sure we were hiring people that didn't want to go to university, but could if they wanted.
Because it's you've got to be motivated to be 16, 17, 18, and be doing a full-time job as well as a qualification. You've almost got to be more motivated than someone wants to go to university, because you're working and learning. You've got to juggle all those kind of balls. So I think we have always been quite, I guess, particular in who we work with as well, in terms of like the candidates, but also the clients, because it's you'll know you have to support the apprenticeship program as a client as well as be a student that's really willing to do it. So if someone walks through our door and says, "Oh, I don't want," my mum's forcing me to be here, basically, we would say, well, perhaps you need to look at college instead, or perhaps you need to look at this route because this is quite hard work. So I think that's why it works, because we place in sort of the best talent in Northampton with the best companies. It's my opinion of it. But
well, no, it's not nice to be considered one of the best companies, but no, it's really good. And I think one of the things I was like really surprised about apprenticeships actually was how like high up it goes in terms of levels. Because I thought you just do AAT, for example, and then you're kind of done. But then apparently you can do like ACCA and CIMA. And
you can do up to degree apprenticeships.
Wow, okay,
now, so you can do that route. So that's why I think the whole thing around them becoming a really popular option for school leavers now. It's because there's so many more opportunities, and you can do an apprenticeship in so many things. There's a website that you can go on and pretty much put anything in, and it will tell you what the standard is for that qualification. So I think there's just a bit more of an awareness that it's I went to university and got a degree, and really, I'm glad that I had that experience. But I think probably more now I see on reflection, I could have started in a junior office role at 16 and been in the same position perhaps. I took a couple of years out, so I was a little bit older, and I was very focused on like getting the study side of it done. But I think it's just sort of knowing that there are other options really there. It's not just all about getting a degree, and not having any experience. You've got to be a little bit more sort of rounded in the world today, I think.
Yeah, I agree. I think that the work experience makes a huge difference actually. And like, I guess this whole discussion isn't just about apprentices, but I think the idea is amazing, because ultimately, and especially over COVID, the government's increased the funding for apprenticeships as well. So so we, but like I think in terms of recruitment and then like even setting them up, the government's always kind of paid it. But I do know if beyond a certain age, they don't. But I think one of the things, because a lot of clients, they talk to me about apprenticeships, and they're like, oh yeah, because they can see we've done it. So they want to know how it works, how we've done it, and they're like, oh, I can get an apprentice for like £4.30 an hour or whatever it is, and I'm like, look, if you pay the minimum amount, you'll get the minimum performance. And and part of the discussion on our side is just trying to get them to be a bit more realistic, and it's and help them understand an apprentice isn't meant to be a cheaper option. They're meant to be a better option in some cases.
Definitely. And I think there is also an understanding from apprentices that register with us that they're not going to be paid, a full-time wage salary because they are still learning. But equally, the reality of it is that if you look on the apprenticeship website, about like the 100 jobs that are on there, probably 2 are paying the minimum. So when you've got all those jobs available and your good people are going on there, they're not going to be applying for those ones. They're going to be applying for the higher ones.
Unless the company's like absolutely amazing.
Unless it's like Goodall or something.
Exactly.
But some apprenticeships, we've worked on have paid more than permanent jobs we've had on. But and again, on that side of it, I will say to an employer, I think you should lower it, because there's no reality in that wage. If they left you and went somewhere else, they're never going to get that again. And if you start a little bit lower, then you can put some building blocks in there. So once you've completed your first exam and you pass that, we can rise it to increase it to this, and you can level it up. But if you start at this amount of money that's not really relative to their experience, and you're probably setting them up for not the real world in some ways. But people, it really varies in terms of wage.
I think you've got to be a certain kind of business to make apprenticeships successful, because
you definitely have.
I did a video this morning, and it was called "Why Your Team Make You Grow the Business," essentially, and it's like, and I was saying to someone yesterday anyway, it's like whenever you've got a team, it's like playing a poker game where the blinds keep going up. So every time they get more qualified, every time they get more experience, you've got to give them the pay rises, and then in inflation just in general, you've got to keep up with it, and then that means, like, from a business point of view, you've got to be thinking, how can we add more value? How can we get more customers? And make the money that we need to pass on to them, because otherwise all of that's got to come out of your pocket. So yeah, it's I've been having those conversations with clients quite a lot at the moment anyway.
Yeah,
And
and the market at the minute, I mean, it's same for apprentices. You know, it's a candidates market really. Like we've got so many apprenticeship roles on.
oh really? Okay. Yeah.
You know, and I think the recruitment across the board, you know, people are struggling more to recruit
Yeah.
generally. You know, and especially if you want the right level of person and all that. So I think employers do have to sometimes realise that they've got to make their role attractive as well, and make the
Yes.
company attractive, and you know, thinking about what's going to make their staff and their recruits, you know, motivated, and what's going to keep them there, as well as sort of that person wanting the job. You know, it's a bit two-sided, I think. But
well, like one of the things I encourage clients to do is like just overstaff if they can.
right, okay.
And it's because when you've got more people,
Yeah.
you know, a lot of accountants out there will say, no, cut your costs, just get it down to the bone.
Yeah.
But I've always, over the last few years, we've always said overstaff, hire as many staff as you can afford to, because a lot of our clients, they're motivated by growing their business, not necessarily making a lot of money today.
Yeah.
So they take that advice, and then but the last sort of year, it's kind of been a real validation of that strategy.
Yeah. Yeah.
Because there's been times where we wanted to grow the team and recruit, but actually we couldn't. But then we had like a spare couple of bods.
Yeah.
And
That's good.
but also it gives you the flexibility, because one of the things we've really stuck by in our business is our points of culture.
Mm-hmm.
So we created our 12 points of culture, and then what happens is when we recruit, we check someone's alignment to those points of culture.
Yeah.
Like, you know, I know people always make fun of you for having integrity as one of your points of culture. Because that's just like meant to be given. But we test all of them, like determination, things like no excuses. Yeah. And we test them all, and then during the probationary period, we continue testing it, and then like we do like biannual appraisals. Yeah. And we also like the appraisal is more about alignment rather than performance.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah.
But for us, so it's like even though there's a candidate shortage, although I guess that's easing a little bit now, isn't it?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, for us, it's quite seasonal as well. So like during the exam time and when kids are leaving school, that's obviously the peak for us in terms of applications. But yeah, I think we, probably earlier this year, we did have a few months where we were like, what's going on? No one's applying for these jobs, But I think it was also, on the flip side of it, we also had so many more apprentice roles come on, because people had held back recruiting through COVID and everything, and then suddenly gone, oh my God, we need some admin support, let's get an apprentice. So that's then gone into mad panic and needed that support now, sort of thing. Yeah. So I think we sort of saw that a little bit. So, more candidates and more jobs and less candidates, a bad combination. But I think we carried on still going.
No, definitely. And like, what kind of advice would you give to an employer looking to bring on an apprentice? Like, is there one thing that they could really do to make it successful?
I think it's all about the support, really.
Okay.
So we, as a training provider, offer a lot of support to the apprentice and the employer. But I think sometimes when people are taking on an apprentice, they think that we are going to train them. Yeah. And we are the role of the apprenticeship provider is really coaching and mentoring them through their qualification. We're not going to teach them how to do their job. So I think one thing that we sort of do have to say, these qualifications are employer led, so really the employer should be involved, understanding what the modules are, understanding how the job role needs to fit the module, and then providing that internal coaching to make them successful. So there is a lot of support. It's not something to do if actually you just need a temp instead. It's a commitment, because you're hopefully going to take an employer that you can shape and have as a permanent member in the future. I think it's probably just, they can be brilliant. I've worked with businesses that have got apprentices that are now managers and directors, but equally you do have to have the time and the staff and the patience to put a little bit of work in at the beginning. So it really is just around getting an understanding of that. But long term, the rewards can be fantastic, both from like a business perspective, but also just from a personal perspective, being able to see someone grow that much, and knowing that you've been involved in that as an employer, I think.
Yeah, you know what? My kids are really young, but I've got a feeling when they're like 18, I'll be a better father because of a lot of the stuff we've been through with the apprentices. And I kind of treat the apprentices like kids, but not in the sense that we spoon feed them everything and and make them eat their greens. But although we have tried to make the office food a bit healthier, but
it's about nurturing, isn't it? And
because they have the pangs of self doubt. They're sometimes, you know, they're this roller coaster, and sometimes they've got all this ambition. They want to get something done, and then they have setbacks in their life, and usually it's around boyfriends and girlfriends, and
but you know, when you're in work, you kind of, that comes into work sometimes, doesn't it? And you know, I've had times when I felt like a counsellor being a recruiter for an apprentice, because I've, you know, spoken to them and they've got this going on and this going on, and it's kind of like helping them support that, but helping them build resilience and understanding that this is life and that's what happens, and you've still got a job and you've still got this, and you know, and sort of building those skills as well. But I think, you know, it's kind of, that's the nice thing about the apprenticeship journey, is that you do get to see all those ups and downs, and then you get to see the outcome at the end. Really, it's never just plain sailing, but that's kind of, life is never just plain sailing, is it? So I think it's you know, and a lot of the apprenticeship kind of delivery is about personal development as well. So we teach the core subjects, but you know, we also have to deliver things about well-being and health and financial well-being and all the things that, you know, would shape them as a young person. You know, even down to like things like radicalisation and, you know, things in society. We have to cover all that as part of, you know, the government sort of directive on apprenticeships, but also just, you know, so they're sort of being shaped into citizens as well as like technically having those skills. So
yeah, absolutely. And I mean, that makes a lot of sense. It's so, I mean, from an employer point of view as well, though, like we're really heavily focused on soft skills, because you know, I've seen my career. I guess I qualified as an accountant in 2010, but I started in like 2007. Yeah. And I've seen, like, in my career that the more successful people in finance, they can do presentations. They can hold a meeting. They can communicate effectively. So like I've made it, like, you know, the way I've always viewed having apprentices in our business is like, you know, starting off we'll teach you all the technical bit, although we'll teach them technical stuff too. But a lot of what we do is process driven anyway. And then, but so a lot of the focus I put on when I'm doing one-to-one development, it's about making sure so people can give an update to the rest of the business. So like every Monday when we have a team meeting, like someone's meant to have done some kind of research about tax and then inform the team about it. So I'm trying to just get every opportunity for them to just slightly get out of their comfort zone, and then talk in front of people, talk to clients. So it's I think you've got to be a different kind of person, but apprentices are so moldable. And I think if they stay in your business, then usually you end up, like, you know, 3 years down the line with someone who lives and breathes your culture. Exactly. And they've not come from anywhere else and think we do this, we don't do it that way here, or you know, they just see your way as the way, really, which is why a lot of you know, a lot of employers you know, do take on apprentices, because it can sort of, you know, can mold people from scratch, really, and develop them that way. So, and succession planning, and you know, that as well is a big part of what people, employers that we speak to, say they think it's a good thing. Yes. And also, actually, I think the other really big advantage, like, to our business of apprenticeships has been, I think when you bring people in who don't have a lot of experience, but they've got the right attitude, it forces you to have really good processes in your business. So, definitely structures, and so people can learn. We spend a lot of time just, like, you know, getting the manual together, making sure that the instructions are all written down. So it's because, and I think when you've got more senior people in the business, they kind of overcompensate for that lack of structure. Because they know what they're doing and can just make it work. And I think one thing we've learned from our own apprentices, it's just the, like, technological, like, you know, advancement that they've got. Like, they can, you know, put something together on Canva, and they can do this and they can do that. And I'm like, oh my god, you know, that'd take me all day to learn how to do that. They're just so much more advanced in that sense, as well, which is good and bad. But you know, for us, that's been positive. Some of the stuff they whiz upon Excel, I'm like, well, so social media is just like, it's a natural skill for them. So and we've no, that's really good. And like, in terms of your own business and your position in it, what was it like being an employee then going to being a managing director, for example?
Yeah, it was. I think it was scarier than I thought it was going to be. And I think the reason for that is, for me, it was it was sort of happening over time, but didn't really realise it was happening. So what I mean by that is, so the owners that the Dale, who had the business when I first joined, he was the managing director. He'd set up the business; it was his business, so I worked under him. And then we had a management buyout, not a management buyout, but a buyout from another business in about 2013, and we had some really supportive and great directors, but that also had other businesses.
Was that ACS?
Yeah, so ACS. So, and then Dale stayed for a couple of years, but kind of slowly sort of stepped away. And then the sort of management team formed, which was 5 or 6 sort of managers in the business that have been there for a very long time. So sort of day to day, I guess a lot of the day-to-day decisions were coming through us kind of anyway. And then the directors would, if there was big things that we needed to talk to them about, or they'd always have obviously an awareness of what was going on. They're coming from management meetings, but sort of day to day we were sort of there. So when the opportunity then came for us to take over, I think a lot of the things we were doing, we just carried on doing, but had a bit more responsibility for. So I think for me, I thought it was going to be something completely different to what it was. Like, people were still asking you if they can do this and if they can leave early and if they can, it was kind of all those questions still. But I think the main difference was just having, like, I'd never really had loads of involvement in like the financial side or understanding. I'd started to get involved in strategy and setting sort of sales strategy, but in terms of sort of, understanding how the funding worked and came in, and knowing about accounts and things, all those things were quite new to me. That it took me, I think that was the hardest thing in terms of like the management of the people and the staff inside. That was kind of all quite easy or a natural flow, but it was more the technical stuff that I was a bit like, how am I going to get my head around this? But luckily Jess was from a bit more of a financial background, she kind of like was like, I'll deal with this. I'm like, payroll, oh my god, I was terrified of pressing the button in case people didn't get paid. But, it was those sort of things that I think I was a bit more overwhelmed by than the actual sort of day-to-day stuff, because operations is kind of running a business. And I was operations manager before, or
so did someone in the business step up and cover for you a bit more on the operations side when you started having to run it? So we've got a new operations manager now, and then we had sort of some recruiters coming through, so I did the recruitment and operations as well, really. So we recruited more staff for recruitment. We took one of the other ladies in the business that was training manager is now operations manager. We just moved some people around, really, to sort of, because we're very much probably for the first year, I think me and Jess were trying to do our jobs that we were doing before we took over, and the director role. And someone must have been exhausting.
Someone said to me, you can't work in the business and work on the business. Which I thought was a really good bit of, I found that I thought, oh well, that's just me like shirking my responsibilities. I didn't want people to think that I didn't do the job anymore. I was quite protective over my clients and who I work with, and I've struggled to give them away to people, but I think that was a good bit of advice, because I think now we've taken a bit of a step back to sort of doing the recruitment and doing the training. We can sort of see it from a bit of a sort of umbrella perspective a little bit more, to say how does this work and who's looking at that. And it's
so you're still involved in the operations to some extent, or?
I mean, I heavily involved with the recruitment side and the training, but I think me and Jess will probably always naturally have those sides that we lean towards a little bit more. Just it's where we come from. Like, I always know what jobs we've got on and what the figures are looking like on recruitment that month. But the date, I mean, I have got some jobs on at the minute that I've been recruiting for actually, but that's just because we had someone off. But day to day sort of recruitment is done by the recruiters now, and I'll just sort of set the strategy and be like, what are we doing this week, girls? Like, where are we going? What jobs have we got on? What's our figures going to be like? So probably more.
It's a bit like coaching, maybe.
Yeah, I think so, yeah. And then I try, and then they don't let me take any jobs on. I'm like, can you please just let me have one job? They're like, no, go away. You're not going to do any recruitment, Katie. But I have got clients that I recruited for like 15 years that will still email me, oh, we're looking for an apprentice. And I really have to say, are you sure you don't want me to look after it? And Charlotte's like, no, it's mine, Katie. Give it to me.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, that's amazing. Yeah. It's Yeah, but were you eager to put your own stamp on the business when you? Because I can imagine if you take over a really established business, the part of me would kind of feel, "Oh, I don't want to change anything in case I break it."
Yeah,
But
yeah.
then, like the other half of me would think, actually, you know what? I want to nichify this.
Yeah, I think we did, but we knew that it wasn't broken, so we didn't
Yeah.
want to be like, oh, let's do something completely different. We're starting
Yeah.
off. We changed the logo in the first sort of year, which was quite a big thing for us to do. I think 'cause it had always
Okay.
been like a red tablet for
Oh, right.
a really long time.
Yeah.
So we changed that, and then we sort of set our agenda around what we wanted, the business to look like, in the next sort of 5 years really. And we've never said, oh, we want to start doing, logistics apprentices or plumbing apprentices. I just think that'd be silly. Like we're good at the niche that we do.
Plus, the market's so big anyway.
Yeah. So I think we have wanted to put our own stamp on it. But I think we've also been really respectful and aware of the brand and what people know us for, and not wanted to, suddenly do something completely crazy and and change it massively.
Like, what you're kind of touching on a really important concept that I talk to people about, and it's because I come across a lot of business owners, and they're so eager to open up into different areas and industries and markets. And like one of the things that I do with clients sometimes, so we use a service called Selector Base, and you can actually just go in, put some criteria in terms of the type of business, and it will just show you how many of those businesses are in the country.
Okay, yeah.
And it's really good because, like, we've got clients sometimes who are like, I want to just move into this sector, and you ask them the question, hey, why do you want to move into that sector? And they'll say something like, because we want to get more sales, we want to grow our sales. And then you do the count on Selector Base, and it's like, oh, there's like 10,000 businesses of the type that you're currently working with in the UK. Did you know you only need like 1% of them? Yeah. And then it kind of refocuses. I've always been like, pretty much every really successful business owner I've come across or talk to, they always niche. They're like really, really specific about what they do. Yeah. And I think even in terms of the resale value of a business, like a really specific and niched business is really, really way more valuable than a business that generalizes and everything. So it's good that you've got that focus, definitely.
Yeah, I think it would be silly to start, plucking things out of thin air that we've not got the skills or expertise to do. I mean, one thing we have looked at and we've started to do a little bit is sort of use the skills and the niche that we have got and expand on that. So we do the apprenticeship recruitment, but what we've also set up recently is a permanent recruitment division.
Yes, I saw the email come through, actually.
So that's, still doing office space, still doing the same roles, but like next level. So if we've got an apprentice who's come back to us that for whatever reason hasn't got a permanent role in that company or didn't want to stay with that company, they'll come back and re-register with us, and we can almost then sort of take them out again and say, right, what client have we got that we know would love this person, but they want a year's experience? So, but again, still in like your marketing and accounts, but just that accounts assistant rather than accounts apprentice role. And then we've also looked at, the training qualifications we do. Some people don't want to do them as a full apprenticeship. They want to just do AAT, or they just want to do an IT course. So we've got a private training section as well, where people can just come and do a qualification. They don't do the full apprenticeships. They don't have to have all those regulations. They might be, a bit more established in a business and just want to get some Excel skills, so they could just do that. So we've kind of, looked at ways that we can take the skills that we've got without changing it completely, but grow the business sort of organically. So
like, when you first started them, what was the graduate arm of the business called?
It was called The First Degree.
The First Degree.
Yeah.
And what happened with that? Did that get sold off as a separate business?
No, so basically the lady that ran that, she didn't own it. She ran it within starting off, but she left and set up her own graduate recruitment company, which was really clever, really, because she was just doing that. And I think probably got to the point where she thought, oh, I'm doing this for someone else. I could do this on my own. And, she's probably one of the people that when I took over the business, she left me a really nice message along with the director and sort of said, I know when I first met you that you'd go on to do great things, and she was probably the first person that gave me an opportunity as a graduate to sort of come in, and the director Dale as well. So that was nice, and she's still running in Northampton, and see her at events and things. So
Oh, amazing. Okay, and it's almost like you're kind of going back to those roots now, though, because with the sort of graduate.
Yeah.
Because
Yeah.
actually, when someone finishes their apprenticeship, are they a graduate at that point, or are they?
I mean, I guess they're not like a graduate as in a degree graduate,
No,
but they
okay.
graduate from their apprenticeship. So I guess they're probably just got more experience.
They're trained,
than
I guess.
in work than just a graduate would do.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think they just become sort of a starting off graduate,
Yeah.
and then register with us. And yeah, if we've got a role that we can help them with, we will then speak to a client about them and put them forward for that. And that's worked quite well so far. So yeah.
How many? So like starting off is quite large now, isn't it? Or have you got about 20 people?
We've got about 20 staff that work for us. So yeah, we're relatively. I guess it's still small to sort of medium size, but it's but yeah, I think it works for the the amount of students that we've got, and obviously the more students we get moving forward, we'll grow that team as well. But
I don't think I've ever said it to Charlotte before, but I always find your business quite inspiring, like the way it's structured. Okay. Like because I know you've got your departments, and then because you've got Charlotte who does a lot of the recruitment now, and she's really taking ownership of that role, and it's like, and when I work with her, I'm like, and it kind of maybe gives me a bit of an insight into the way you run the business in terms of the freedom she's got to actually execute her role and build her team. And it's something I've we've always done really well with accounting people. But one of my challenges has always been to build up the sales side, build up the marketing side. And I'm hoping, I will by the end of the coming year, we'll have a sales team in place essentially, and then I want to just step away from the selling. Because I'd rather focus on existing clients than getting new clients. You can add so much more value. We've got programs in the business that I can develop if I just had more time. So that's what I really want to be doing. And I've got, that's like my goal for the next year. Just get the marketing sorted, get the sales sorted. And but your business is a bit more mature now, so I guess you've already done that. Do you have a marketing team?
So we've got the lady that looks after the digital marketing students, also does our internal marketing as well. Right, okay. So she's brilliant, Sarah. So that's something that I'm quite involved with as well. So we meet every week and talk about what our plans are for this week and what we're going to put forward and things. So we did used to use an external marketing company, but when we took Sarah on, she'd actually got quite a lot of the skills that we needed, sort of thing. So we thought, actually, I don't think we need loads of stuff going out. We just wanted to develop a sort of brand image, but funnily enough today we were talking about TikTok, and because we're not on TikTok, but
no, not yet,
I'm a bit scared of it. But the girls have got some of the recruiters are a little bit younger now, and they're like, oh, maybe we should do a TikTok.
Apparently 70-year-olds on TikTok. But
really, I
was talking to a client last week because we had a quarterly planning day, and she was like, she's kind of my age or maybe slightly older. And she just showed me a video, and it was of her getting ready to go out, just for a walk. So it's just her putting a coat on, a hat on, and gloves on. And she was like, "Hey, there's 1,000 views on this." Crazy, and it was literally her getting ready for a walk. And
it scares me. It just shouts at me on my phone. I've just about mastered Facebook. That's as much as I can do. But I can share a post, and that's pretty much it.
I've got a feeling TikTok is like the new gold rush. It's because there was a time when Facebook you could pay 2 pence and get one click through to your website. Now it's more like £2. And so I guess you're always looking at the next platform where you can get those economies of scale just by being an early adopter.
And it's obviously who you're trying to target and where. And Facebook for us is more parents now. We're trying to get with the parents.
Actually,
which is great. But I think TikTok for those that we actually are looking for jobs, and it's where we need to be really, because it used to be Instagram, but that seems to be a bit of a older parent generation moving into now, whereas TikTok seems to be the one. But I think it's hard to get that balance of putting something out there that's funny but also still quite professional, but has the right tone. It's not something that I'd just end up embarrassing myself, I think. So
but that's the kind of thing you can always delegate to the other people in the business.
People
I guess
know what they're doing.
Oh, that's really cool. What would you say the biggest challenge in terms of when you've been starting off has been so far?
I think we took over in November 2020, so it was sort of we were just going into another lockdown, so that was obviously quite a challenge. I think removing everything from completely face-to-face to remote was
Yeah.
quite a challenge, because we really wanted to change the way the delivery happened, but also make it the best it could be. So we had to invest in quite a lot of new resources and on online training, and you know, we couldn't just pick it up and move it over. It had to be completely redeveloped really. So that was quite a big challenge. You know, I'd say sort of I moved into the role quite smoothly, but still now I still get a bit of imposter syndrome. You know, sometimes I'm like, God, if people knew what I was really like, they'd be like, why is she doing that job? You know, it comes with a bit of self-doubt sometimes, but I think everyone sort of has that from time to time. But yeah, I think it's probably just the you know, the world and the challenges that's thrown up. Sometimes it feels a bit relentless. It's like we get over one thing and then there's something else and then there's something else. But again, like, I suppose it'd be easy to go, oh God, why is this happening now? But I guess why not really? Sometimes, like, that's just that is life, isn't it? You just, things happen and you just kind of do the best you can, and you know, support your team around you and move forward. And I think that's sort of what we've done really. And you know, we had a staff member that had been with us a really long time pass away soon after we took over, so that was really tough, just kind of dealing with that, but also kind of supporting the staff through that. So just things like that come up that I think sometimes knock you back a bit. And I think the difference is when you are the face of that business or running that business, you've got to get up for your staff and try and build that positivity and resilience, even when you don't feel like it yourself, almost, you know. But
I guess like the idea of leadership's always in the back of your mind. It's like it's the number of days where I just want to have a lie in, and but then the other side is I've got kids to drop to school, so I can't. But it's almost like when I started my business, I was like, hey, I've got so much freedom. I'd be working from home, eating whatever I want, taking breaks to watch TV if I wanted. And then gradually, when you start moving to an office and you start building that team, you then have to start acting like an employee all over again. Just so they act like employees. But have there been any times where you've like felt like giving up?
No, never. I've never regretted doing it, and I've never questioned doing it. You know, despite sometimes not feeling like I'm always doing the best job, I try. You know, and I always try and support people and do the best I can. I've always been a really hard worker from when, I think that's come from my parents. You know, I've always, even before I took over starting off, I was always the first person in the office, and I was always the last to leave. You know, I kind of got that work ethic instilled in me. I was a real bit of a worrier at school, so I kind of always wanted to do well. I didn't want to fail. So I've always worked really hard, and sometimes, you know, you do burn out when you're like that, I think. And I have had points of that, but I've never questioned, you know, doing it, because I couldn't imagine anyone else starting off and having to work for them. And I think we got to that point where it was like, either we're going to sell it or you've got the opportunity here to take over it. And I wouldn't have been able to stay if someone else had taken over it, I don't think. So
I guess, like, did you have much notice in terms of the handover, or was it more of a surprise?
No, I think it had always been kind of in the background that it was something that you know, myself and Jess wanted to do, and it was you know, something that we would be interested in if it was there. We didn't think it'd happen when it happened. I thought it would perhaps be after COVID, but but I think that, you know, it starts, and it's not just overnight. It was a process that probably took sort of 6 months to a year in reality, with all, you know, all the things you go through, the paperwork and all that sort of stuff. But but I thought it would happen at some point, but I didn't think perhaps then it would. But
so I know we've kind of already covered it in some of the other questions, but what would you say is the one thing that really drives you to grow the business and keep it going?
I think it's just really being passionate about what we do, to be honest. Like, it works. It's a great way for, you know, young people to build a career, and I think I see that live every day, and I speak to employers every day who say how brilliant their apprentices are and how they're growing their business, and we speak to parents and young people who have gone on that journey and sort of, you know, come out, you know, well-rounded individuals. And I just think it's important, and it, you know, it's valuable, and for both sides. So I think it's just believing in what we do. Obviously, the staff as well are all, everyone that's starting off is very passionate about apprenticeship. So you know, you really get that feel, you know, when we had our Ofsted in October last year, they said, like, you really feel that everyone here, you know, has got a lot of integrity. They love what they do. They're passionate about apprenticeships. They're really supportive. And I think we feel that, and that kind of gets you up in the morning because you want everyone to sort of get on board with that. So, yeah.
That's really good. How did you do in the Ofsted report?
We got a good. So, yeah, that was good for us. It was a short inspection because we'd had a good last time, so we wouldn't have been able to go up, but unless they'd done a long inspection. But we could have gone down essentially. So, no, it was good. They said some of the areas that we were kind of delivering in, you know, next time we could be aiming for outstanding. So,
amazing.
So we were really pleased, considering as well we'd taken over in the last year and the whole business model had completely changed and delivery had changed. You know, it was quite a different one for us. So yeah, some of the comments were really nice, and I think they only had like 2 areas for development, which it was really positive. So yeah, we were chuffed.
So that's amazing. Yeah. And what advice would you give to a young person considering their next steps?
I think make sure you do your research. Like there are loads of options, you know, around. When I was at sixth form, I basically was like sat down and said, what university are you going to go to? It wasn't a case of what else are you going to do. So I think make sure you're aware that there are apprenticeships, there are universities, there's college courses, you know, there's a whole list of things you can do now. It isn't just one route. And I think just take some time to have a think about what you're good at, what you like, and then try and tie that in with an apprenticeship, because you know, we do have people that come in are very specific, they want to be an accountant, but there are other people that are not really sure on what they want to do, and you know, that's fine when you're 16, 17, 18, 19, sometimes older, you know, but I think really taking some time to consider that, and perhaps getting some work experience, voluntary work in industries that you think you might be interested in, rather than starting an apprenticeship or starting something just kind of because you picked it out of thin air, and not really knowing what it's about. I think trying to get some sort of work experience while you're at school is a good thing.
And I guess you could flip that around and say, you know, employers have a responsibility to try and give people that work experience. Yeah,
because that is really tough, you know, for schools. We hear a lot that, you know, people, they're ringing employers and trying to get their work experience, and it can be a bit of a burden. You've got to find something for that person to do, and you've got to, you know, support them. But you know, if employers then do want to have apprentices later on down the line, you know, all that's important to make sure that people are getting exposed to different industries, especially, you know, locally. We've got some brilliant companies in Northampton. You know, that I think it's really important that young people see what's out there, so they're not heading off to London or whatever. They are staying local and trying to sort of, you know, come into the local economy a little bit more. Yeah,
it makes a lot of sense. And I mean, when I was at school, like it pretty much, I went to a grammar school, and 95% of the people went to university. Me too. That was and that was like the Tony Blair years as well. So like, and I think the government's target was half the people should go to university. It is, I guess, like there's probably still some families with the mindset where you've got to go to university. But actually, like you know, there's probably there's so many other options. But I love apprenticeships. It works really well for us. But and I think we're just sort of coming to the end of the podcast. But if you could give someone who's thinking of buying or starting up a business or in the early years a bit of advice, what would that be? What would you have done differently, or maybe?
What I've done differently? I think, well, probably one thing I would say for me was quite important was I did it with someone else that's always got my back, and I've always got her back. We work really well together. I think it is hard work, so don't go into it thinking, you know, I'm just going to be able to leave at like 4 o'clock every day because I'm the MD now. Probably stay humble, you know, try and remember that, you know, we've not got to the heights of a massive training provider as yet, but I think always try and remember that, you know, people are people still, and staff will have struggles, and clients sometimes, you know, you're talking to someone that might have had a bad day, and just try and always be supportive and stay humble to kind of where you started, really, I think. And kind of show up, and you know, try and just put the passion in for your career that you kind of, you know, want for the business, really. Okay,
amazing. And a final question, really. So what's in your future, like that 5-year plan you were talking about? Like what does that entail?
So obviously we've set up the permanent division, which is called SA Permanent Recruitment. So really sort of growing on that and developing, more clients that would come to us for permanent recruitment, and then SO private training as well. So the private training piece where we can sort of offer, those individual courses to people, and obviously to grow apprenticeships outside of Northamptonshire as well. So, Northampton will always be our base and our sort of, our heart, but
Yes.
I think the opportunity to sort of develop our love for apprenticeship sort of elsewhere, and help clients and candidates outside of the area would be a really sort of great thing for us to start doing a little bit more. So we've started it a little bit, but I think over the next 5 years we'd like to see that grow, and maybe have other training centres as we go as well.
Okay, that's absolutely amazing. Well, Katie, thank you very much for joining us on the podcast. It's been amazing. Thank you again for listening, and don't forget to, if you've enjoyed listening to this, don't forget to subscribe and watch out for the next episode, which will be coming out in a few weeks.